So now we're continuing with slope. If you will recall, slope can also be called rate of change. It also can be unit rate. And we have different variables, if you remember, that we are using when we're referring to slope. If it is a proportional line, like in, for instance, y equals kx, k is slope. When it is a non-proportional relationship, y equals mx plus b, then m is the variable that represents slope. You will also see it in your calculator when you do the stat edit function. You will see it represented as an A. So those are all things that you can see it. Also, when you see per, like something is per minute, it is also referring to slope, the rate that something is happening. So those are all terms, if you see, that you are keying into that you're talking about slope. Now, when you see slope, like for instance in this one, this particular line, if it is increasing from left to right, it is a positive slope. If it is decreasing from left to right, so if it was going, so this one is going up, if it was going down from left to right or decreasing, then it is a negative slope. 0 is a horizontal line. That gives you a 0 slope. So it's basically a line that looks just like the x-axis, going straight horizontally across. Undefined slope is a vertical line. And I remember with AA2, you guys had a lot of trouble with this because these would be represented, for instance, on a horizontal line. That's going to be y equals something, like 1. A vertical line would be x equals something, let's say -2. Okay? Now remember, a quick way to remember this is our funny slope guy. Positive slope, negative slope, undefined because it's vertical, and 0 slope because it's horizontal. Okay? Now how we figure these is this is on your star chart. So if you ever forget, this is what it shows you the formula to figure out slope, which is if you have two different ordered pairs, x1, y1, which you just have to label, and you have x2, y2, you just plug them into the formula to figure out your slope. Or if you're given a graph, you can do rise over run. The other thing, if you're given a table, remember the calculator functions. We would hit stat edit. And I can go over if you need those again. Stat edit, you would enter in your x values, then your y values, and then you would hit stat again, stat calc, and you would hit number 4, and then calculate. I can go over that again in more detail if you need it. But what they're trying to show here, and this is very similar to one of those problems that we had on the STAR exam, is if you have two triangles, these two on the same slope, they are going to be similar. And I think on the STAR example, they gave you one like this. This shows that, and let me get a highlighter quick, that this is the same as this because they're on the same line, so they have the same slope. And triangles that have the same slope, as in this case, and are similar, triangles that have the same slope, on the same line, have the same slope, and are similar triangles. Let me restate that. The ratios of their corresponding sides are equal. And that's exactly one of those key points that they were showing us on the STAR. We have to know that so we can set up a proportion, which is what we did on the problem on the mock STAR, which we'll be going over more and more detail. But now we're going to look at examples of how to figure this out. So for instance, this one says the slope of the graph is what? It's asking us for it. So since they're giving us a graph, we can use rise over run. The rise is always going to be your change in your y value and so I'm going to put change in y, and the run is always your change in x. So for instance, one way I always like to look at this is to make sure I'm checking it. So for instance, since this is decreasing from left to right, I know this is a negative slope. So I know my answer has to be negative, and it's kind of a good quick check. So I'm going from 0.5 to 2.2. So I can do my rise, which is actually kind of falling down. And if you go down 1, 2, 3, here I'll make it out here, 1, 2, 3, I had a -3 rise. So I'm going to put -3, and my run is 1, 2, but it's positive. So that means my slope is actually -3/2. Now another way you could have done that is plot those points and use your formula of y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Usually though, when they give you a graph, this is the easiest way to do it. But now we're going to look at the table. This is where we get into the stat edit. What I would like you to do is to put it into your calculator. And this is kind of a good refresher. In fact, I would like you to stop this recording and take a moment and put it in yourself and then check it over with me. So hopefully you did that by yourself, and then I will just be showing you again and making sure you got the correct answer. So again, you start with stat, edit, hit that in. If you already have values in, you just replace them. 0, 2, in L1 goes all of your x values, 4 and 6. L2 is all your y values. So I'm going to put in -2, and don't forget always to use your negative key. 1.4, 4.8, and 8.2. So now I go back to stat once I've entered in all the values. I go toggle over to calculate, and I hit number 4, which is linear regression. Enter, go down to calculate, and that gives me a form like this. The only difference is B is still your y-intercept, but your slope is given as 1.7. So the slope of this table is 1.7. And finally, the last way that we're showing this is between two ordered pairs. And they would like you to use your formula of y2 minus y1. So I always just like to label them x1, y1, x2, y2. And so then I use my formula, y2 minus y1. And yes, I'm crossing over this, x2 minus x1 gives you 7 minus 6 all over -2 minus 2. So this is going to leave me with 1 over -4. So my answer of the slope is -1/4, or you can always put it as -0.25. Okay? And again, if you didn't want to use the formula, and that's fine, you could still have gone back on the calculator and done stat edit. And the only thing you would have to do is clear the other values that you don't need. So you can always use that too. If you do need to clear the calculator, remember that is always second, the plus sign or memory, 7, 1, 2. And then it's cleared. And you can always have then your stat edit is going to be clear, and you will be starting with a fresh slate, just as a reminder. So if you have any questions, please, when you finish this, come up and show me that you have the notes, and I'll give you the activity. Thank you so much.